downstairs fellowship up here. So please now greet your co-worshiper. Let them know it's a pleasure to worship alongside them this morning. Okay, thank you everybody. We have one more announcement before we continue on with our service.
Good morning. I would just like to brag a little bit about Melody. I asked her some time ago, I said, boy, we need to do something about our register. It's so out of date and everything. And she just took it and ran with it. She got all the information about that company. She coordinated everything. She got us all to come in the back and sign up, and just spent a lot of time. So thank you very much, Melody. We really appreciate your hard work.
This is my song to you, the melody face for you, the expression of wonder.
time joining for a while, we've been going through this series called Chapter 2. We intentionally started this series after Easter because we want to address questions like this. What do we do after salvation? Where do we go from here? Because after we come to know Jesus as our Lord and Savior, there are questions arise in terms of how are we actually supposed to live? We kind of need to set this landscape for which we're meant to grow towards from here. So we start to go into the fact that, you know what? In a lot of ways, life after coming to know Jesus as my Savior is a bit awkward because I start to ask things like, can I actually grow from here? Am I actually going to change? Am I going to be different? Because we know that we can't go back to sin. One of the things we've said over the past year or so has been this: to know what we know in Jesus and to go back to sin would essentially be to cheapen grace. And we talk about the fact that, yes, grace is free, but it is not cheap by any means. Yet that's exactly what we do when we come to know Jesus and then go back into living in sinful lives, the very sins that Jesus had been coming to free us from. Just turning back to those things would be to cheapen the grace that he extends to us. And one of the other things we can't do after coming to know Jesus is this: we cannot try to earn God's favor from this point. And I think that's one of the mistakes that a lot of Christians make, where we think that after we come to know Jesus, now we're somehow going to try to be good and be good enough in such a way that we go and think that, you know what, if Jesus had to come and die for me now, he'd have to die for me a little bit less because somehow I'm a better person now on my own. And we forget that you cannot earn that which is freely given. In fact, to do so, to live our lives in such a way that we're trying to prove ourselves to God and to people around us would just be exhausting. And one of the things I brought up when we started this series was one of my favorite shows. It was Will Smith's show in the 90s, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I'm going to recap the scene that I showed to you that day. Will Smith was raised by a single mom in Philadelphia. Eventually, he moves to LA with his aunt and uncle. His biological aunt and his uncle is actually not related to him by blood, right? And one day, his biological father comes by, and Will thinks that he's finally going to have this relationship that he always craved for with his dad. And he's about to go on this summer-long road trip with him. Except right before they're about to leave, his dad, Lou, tells Uncle Phil to tell Will that he's actually not going to take him because he's going to spend time with a girl instead. Except right as his dad is going to leave, Will sees his dad. He thinks he's about to go with him and explains to him that he's not taking him at all. His dad goes and says, "I love you, son." And Will in return says, "Thanks a lot, Lou." Doesn't call him dad in turn. And as he leaves, he tells Uncle Phil, he's like, "You know what? I've obviously done fine without my dad." He's like, "I've done pretty well on my own. I went through middle school, high school without him. I started on the basketball team without him. I had 15 great birthdays without him, and he never even bothered to send me a card. So to hell with him." And then he's like, "You know what? From here, it's only going to get better without my dad at a certain point. I'm going to find me an awesome wife. She's going to be hot. I'm going to have a mess of kids just everywhere. And my dad isn't going to be able to tell me how to be a good father to my kids because through my experience with my dad, there's nothing he could have taught me to be a good dad myself." And at the end of this, he sinks his chest and he just cries out and he says, "Why don't he want me, man?" And there's this moment where he cries about this non-existent relationship with his biological father, where he then turns to his Uncle Phil. And over the course of this show, the relationship that Will has with his uncle, who he has no blood relationship to, is one that shines most. Uncle Phil is somebody who takes Will not only into his home, but into his life. Throughout the show, you see that when bad things happen between them, they're the ones who reconcile. He's the one that calls him son. He's the one that raises him as his own. And at the very end of the show, as the series comes to a finale, Uncle Phil goes to his children, tells them that they better be sure to be by the phone on Sunday nights, no matter where they are scattered throughout the country, because they are going to talk as a family. And he makes sure to let his nephew know that he expects him to be by the phone as well.